Angelica Spurb.
Hi, and welcome to Spurbs Herbs episode 83. Today we're going to be talking about excuse me, and let me do that again. Excuse me. Wow. Okay. Let me do another click. Hi, and welcome to Spurbs Herbs episode 83. Today we're going to be talking about another Chinese herb, Zisuye, or Perillae Folium, also known as simply Perilla Leaf. And it's a great herbal formula, so let's see what we're going to talk about today. We're going to be looking at another single Chinese herb, Zisuye, Perillae Folium, or simply Perilla Leaf, as I just mentioned. This herb is another herb in the Chinese medical subcategory of warm acrid herbs that release the exterior and can be used to calm a fetus and help seafood poisoning. In fact, you are probably aware of this herb even if you've never heard of it before, especially if you eat sushi. We'll talk about that in just a minute. As usual, we will explore all the intricacies of this herb as well as an explanation of its category. And as always, we will look at something a little different. We will continue our discussion of pharmacognosy with a conversation about tannins today. Please stay tuned for this intriguing episode. Before we get into that, I'd like to remind you and talk about, I've been teaching for quite a while now on a wide variety of topics. If you like this podcast and want to explore more of my courses, they are available at www.integrativemedicinecouncil.org. That's Integrative Medicine Council, COUNCIL.org, and include a ton of different topics, including my drug herb series, looking at drugs and how they interact with herbs and vice versa, several ethics and safety courses, Chinese medical research, several treatment of condition courses such as arthritis, neck and back pain, COVID, and depression and anxiety, and one of my favorite courses, the Chinese Herbal First Aid Kit. And they're all at a reasonable cost, full stop. They're reasonable cost, period. But you can also get an additional 20% off with the code SH20OFF, SH for Spurbs Herbs, 20 off. And that is all lowercase, SH20 off. You get 20% off our already low prices. So don't hesitate. Go check out the courses. There's lots of cool ones. If you can't find one that you're interested in, let me know. Let me know what you're interested in. I'll make one up for you. So with that, let's talk about pharmacognosy and tannins. In our last episode, we discussed pharmacognosy and glycosides based on my new class on pharmacognosy and Chinese medicine in the Integrative Nutrition series. Today, we will discuss another category of secondary metabolites commonly found in plants, tannins. As a reminder, primary metabolites are necessary for life and include fats, carbohydrates, and amino acids and proteins, all of which can be supplied by plants. Secondary metabolites, which may not play a direct impact on life but may be important for health, these may include vitamins and minerals, are also present in plants. And then there are at least 1 million other compounds in plants, and that is where we start to look at how they may affect our bodies and health. And that in a nutshell is kind of what pharmacognosy is about. Today we're going to talk about tannins, another type of chemical that are in plants. So technically, tannins are defined as secondary metabolites that can tan or convert animal skin into leather, are water-soluble phenolics. We talked about phenols on the last episode. Phenol is basically a benzene ring, which is 6-carbon ring with 3 double bonds in there, plus an hydroxyl group coming off of it. That's a hydrogen and oxygen group coming off of it. And they're water-soluble phenolics of a certain size between 300 and 3,000 molar mass, and with the ability to precipitate proteins and alkaloids. So it can do all that. They're originally classified into hydrolyzable and non-hydrolyzable or condensed tannins. Hydrolyzable means it can be broken down with some water as well, using water, hydrogen and oxygen. More recently, there are 4 major types categorized by their structures. We have gallotannins, elagitannins, complex tannins, and condensed tannins. Gallotannins are polymers. So a polymer means single units that are attached, multiples are attached together. So gallotannins are polymers of galloyl units. So when you have multiples attached together, that's a polymer. Attached to polyol units and include tannic acid and Chinese and Turkish gallotannin. So those are gallotannins. We have elagitannins, contain hexahydroxydiphenol, or HHDP. These are just different chemical structures. Complex tannins have a catechin unit bound glycosidically to a gallotannin or an elagitannin unit. So we talked about glycosides in our last episode. A glycoside is basically something that has a sugar bound to it as well. So we have in this case, complex tannins have a catechin unit bound with a sugar to a gallotannin or an elagitannin unit. Condensed tannins, also called proanthocyanidins, are oligomeric, so meaning they have a few. Polymers can be very large. Oligomeric means a few or several repeating chemicals. And polymeric, so it can be more than just a few. Proanthocyanidins, formed by the linkage of one catechin with another one. Okay, that's a lot of chemistry there. Okay, we're moving on quickly. Data supports the use of many tannins for the external treatment of skin injuries and inflammation, and internally may help chronic diseases and may be antioxidant, antimicrobial, which means it's good against bacteria and viruses and maybe other microbes, cardioprotective, so it helps the heart, anti-diabetic, anti-obesity, and anti-mutagenic, which can help prevent cancer from forming. Tannins may reduce the absorption of proteins, certain drugs, and GI issues. High doses of catechins can cause hepatitis, renal failure, that's kidney failure, hemolytic anemia, which is where the blood is getting broken down, thrombocytopenia, which means fewer platelets, which is not a good thing, fever, and skin issues. So there can be quite a bit of issues here at higher doses, especially of catechins. Chinese herbs that contain tannins include cha, lu cha, which is green tea, wulong cha, which is oolong tea, wubeizi, du, and hudzi. Not du a little bit is, a little bit commonly used. The rest are not super commonly used. Tea, of course, is super commonly used, but than that. And with that quick introduction to tannins as beneficial components of plants, let's get into our herb of the day. So we do have an herbal legend. If you're not, we haven't done one of these in a little while. I have this great little book called Chinese Herbal Legends, which have little stories about 50 herbs. So, there's 300 herbs. So that's 1 out of 6 herbs, which is probably about what we're averaging. So this one does have a nice herbal legend. So I have it here. The following story is from that book by Zhu and Zhu. So let's get into it. On the Double Ninth Festival, a group of rich young men had a crab eating contest in a wine shop. Because the crabs were delicious, they ate many. The empty crab shells piled up like a small tower on the table. Hua Tuo, so this is an interesting one. I have to give you a little bit of background on Hua Tuo as we get into this. Hua Tuo is one of the most famous doctors in Chinese medicine. It is said that he performed surgery, and he's, as far as I know, there are certain family points and everything, but as far as I know, his are the only points that we all learn. There's a whole series of points called Hua Tuo Jiaji, or Hua Tuo's magic points, that we use frequently, very frequently, as acupuncture points. So Hua Tuo, incredibly famous Chinese doctor. So Hua Tuo also came there to have a drink with his student. When he saw the young men having their crab eating contest and eating crazily, he kindly tried to persuade them to stop. Crabs are cold, so you'd better not eat too much. A crab eating contest won't be good for you, young men. We eat what we paid for. Who wants to listen to you? The young men rudely replied. If you eat more, you will suffer from diarrhea. It could endanger your lives. Get away with you. Don't try to frighten us. Even if we die of eating, what business is it of yours? Not listening to Hua Tuo's advice, these young men continued their extravagant eating and drinking. Crabs are delicious. Who says that people may die by eating them? Let's eat as we like to make the old man die of jealousy, one of them shouted. As Hua Tuo saw they acted so rashly, he went to see the shop owner. You mustn't sell them more wine or they will die of it, said Hua Tuo. As the shop owner wanted to earn money from these young men, why should he listen to Hua Tuo? Even if something happens, what business is it of yours? Mind your own business and leave mine alone, said the boss angrily. Hua Tuo could only sit down with a sigh and drink his own wine. At midnight, the young men suddenly cried out that they were suffering from stomachache. Some of them were even sweating all over, and some rolled about under the table. What's wrong with you? The owner hurriedly asked. We are suffering from some serious stomach aches. Please help us and send for a doctor at once. Where can I find a doctor at midnight? Please help us, otherwise we will die. I am a doctor, Hua Tuo said, and came over to them. Turning pale with fright, the young men cried out, Oh! But they had no time to care about losing face and cried, Master, please give us a cure. Didn't you refuse my advice just now? Asked Hua Tuo. A great person doesn't care about a common person's mistake. Please have mercy on us and save us. We will pay you as much as you want. I don't want water. I don't want money. We will give you whatever you like. I want you to promise me one thing. Not just one. We will promise you 1,000, even 10,000 things. Please tell us what it is. From now on, you should listen to old men's advice and not be so reckless. Certainly, please save us. Hua Tuo went out with his student to gather some stems and leaves of a kind of purple grass, which he then decocted for the young men. After they drank this medicinal liquid, their stomach aches stopped. How are you feeling now? Asked Hua Tuo. Much better. At that time, there was no name for this kind of medicinal herb. Because the patients felt really comfortable after taking it, Hua Tuo named it Zishu. The young men said goodbye to Hua Tuo with many thanks and went home. That was dangerous. You shouldn't only want to earn money. You should also care about people's lives, said Hua Tuo to the shop owner. The owner nodded, ashamed. What book says that these leaves of purple grass can reduce crab poison, said Hua Tuo's student. Hua Tuo told his student that this knowledge was not found in books, but he had learnt it from animals. One summer, while Hua Tuo was gathering medicinal herbs along a riverbank, he saw an otter seize a big fish. The otter ate it for a long time until its belly was as big as a drum. The otter was sometimes in the water, sometimes on the bank, sometimes laying motionlessly, and sometimes moving wildly about. It seemed to be feeling extremely poorly. But after it climbed to a piece of land with purple grass beside the bank and ate some leaves and lay still for a while, it was as well as usual. Hua Tuo thought that according to the theory of Chinese medicine, since fish is cold in nature and the purple grass is warm in nature, the purple grass could perhaps reduce fish poison. From then on, he kept it in mind. Later, Hua Tuo made pills and medicinal powder with stems and leaves of the grass. He discovered that it had the ability to release cold and was good for the spleen. It could also moisten lungs, cure cough, and clear phlegm. Because this medicinal herb was purple and made people comfortable, Hua Tuo named it Zishu, or purple and comfortable, so purple comfortable. But nobody knows why people later called it Zishu, which is what it is today, Zishu ye. Ye meaning leaf, so Zishu is the plant. And that's our herbal legend for this herb. So let's talk about this herb. It comes from the family Labiatae. Standard species is Perillae frutescens elbrit. The medicinal part in this context is the leaf. We've actually already talked about Zishu gong, which is the root, and I believe the stems also have medicinal properties as well. But today we're talking about the leaf. And the English translation of this is pretty straightforward. It's purple perilla leaf. Other names for this include beefsteak plant, Japanese basil, Japanese melissiae, purple mint, purple perilla, shiso, salam, wild coleus, Korean Perilla, Suye, Zisu, Jasuye, and in Japanese, Shisoyo, and in Korean, Jasoyop, Yop, Jasoyeop. I don't know how to pronounce Japanese or Korean, so I'm doing my best and apologize. So let's talk about that Labiatae family. Labiatae, also known as the Laminaceae family, includes flowering plants commonly known as the mint, dead nettle, or sage family. Generally, Laminaceae is considered the more correct name, though Labiatae is a correct alternative. So this came from my main Chinese herb text, which was written in 2004. So it's going on 20 years, and there's always rejuggling of the names of these things. So when the book was written, Labiatae was probably the correct name. It still is a correct alternative, but now Laminaceae is the more correct name for this family. And this family includes many aromatic culinary and medicinal herbs, including basil, mint, rosemary, sage, savory, marjoram, oregano, hyssop, thyme, lavender, salvia, catnip, oriental motherwort, and perilla. There are approximately 236 genera and up to 7,500 species in this family. And the flowers are usually bisexual, so they have both male and female parts on them. So that's a quick overview of the family. Let's get back into Zisuye or Perilla. So according to Bensky and his team, so we have, as you may recall, we have three main texts we look at single herbs, and then a couple other texts as well. So the three, one of them is Bensky et al., and they say the dosage is 5 to 9 grams. Our other text is Chen and Chen's text, which basically agrees with 5 to 10 grams, so slightly different. But pretty much the same. Bensky's a little bit more traditional, so they tend to go with multiples of 3, so 6 to 9, 6 to 12, 6 to 15, which is based on a traditional measurement. Chen is a little bit more modern, and they tend to go with 5s and 10s just to make it a little bit easier in a modern context. But so 5 to 9 and 5 to 10 are basically the same. Brandon Wiseman, however, say the dose is 3 to 10, so it goes lower in decoction, but 30 to 60 grams can be used for fish or crab poisoning, so a much higher dose for fish or crab poisoning. Then Brandon Wiseman is our third major textbook that we look at. So the category for this herb, Bensky and his team put this herb in the warm, acrid herbs that release the exterior subcategory under herbs that release the exterior. Chen and Chen say it is in the wind cold releasing herbs subcategory under the exterior releasing herbs category. So exactly the same. They just, one talks about what the herb is, what the structure of the herb is, warm and acrid. And the other one is what it does. So it releases wind cold. So, but they're both exactly the same category. And Brown Weissman say it is a warm, acrid, exterior resolving medicinal under the exterior resolving medicinals category. So they all pretty much agree. There might be a little bit of translational difference, but they all are basically saying the same thing. All three of our sources say it is acrid and warm, so spicy, acrid, and warm, and it enters the lung and spleen channels. But with Bensky, they also add it is aromatic. It's an aromatic herb. So this is interesting. I always love it when our sources differ. So Bensky et al. And Chen Chen, who are the two books that actually include first mentioning original sources for the herb, they disagree on the original source for this herb. Bensky et al. Says it was first mentioned in the Materia Medica of Medicinal Properties, or the Yaoxing Ben Cao, written by Jin Chuan during the Tang Dynasty, or around 600 CE. Chen Chen say it was first mentioned in the collection of commentaries on the classic of the Materia Medica, the Ben Cao Jing Ji Zhu by Tao Hong Jing in 480 to 498 CE, so at least 100 years before that. So, of course, when there's a discrepancy like that, I want to go, okay, how can I resolve this discrepancy? So another article written by Wu in 2023 says the first mention was during the Western Han Dynasty, which went from 202 BCE to 220 CE, so 400-year period. But the first medicinal use was recorded around 500 CE in the miscellaneous records of famous physicians, Mingyi Bielu. So Wu actually kind of agrees with Chen Chen that it's around 500 CE, but says it was in a totally different book. So what I get 3 different sources, say 3 different original sources for this herb. Not being an herbal historian and access to having original versions of these books, I can't say which is right and which one isn't. All I can say is there's controversy over this, but at least it seems to be, at least medicinally, around 500 or 600 CE. So let's talk about herbs that release exterior. We have now discussed this category and subcategory of herbs several times during our adventures examining Chinese herbs, and we will repeat that information here because it completes everything that is going on. And without this in this context, I think it would hurt our episode. So I'm going to go over it again. So if you've heard it before, I apologize and appreciate you continuing listening, of course. But let's get into it again. It's a good reminder. These are important herbs. So according to Bensky et al., exterior-releasing herbs are those that release disorders lodged in the very superficial levels of the body. When external pathogenic factors, including wind heat, wind cold, wind dampness, and summer heat, invade the body, they first attack its superficial exterior aspects. Symptoms associated with the exterior then appear: chills, fever, headache, stiff neck, and general muscle aches. Sometimes sweating will appear, which resolves the condition, in which case no treatment is necessary. At other times, however, there will be an absence of sweating, or even though there is sweating, it is not accompanied by any change in the condition. At this juncture, herbs that release the exterior are used. Most exterior-releasing herbs are diaphoretics. That is, they release or expel the external pathogenic influences through sweating. There is a saying in Chinese medicine: when the disease is in the skin, sweating will bring it out. When a disease progresses slightly further into the body, it is said to lodge in the muscle layer. The clinical presentation then includes fever, general body aches, and profuse sweating. At this stage, especially when the patient is sweated without any beneficial change in their condition, it is appropriate to use the subset of herbs that release the muscle layer. The most prominent member of this group is Cinnamomum ramulus or guizhi. That's cinnamon twig. Not bark, so it's not our spice, it's the twig of the tree. Some of the herbs that release the exterior have additional functions: stopping coughs and wheezing, controlling pain or spasms, and venting rashes such as measles. So that is the herbs that release the exterior. Bensky et al. Continues to discuss the subcategory of warm acrid herbs that release the exterior. Herbs that release the exterior can be further divided by character and function into warm acrid and cool acrid classes. The warm acrid herbs dispel wind cold and are used for exterior disorders when the fever is mild, the chill severe, and there are other signs and symptoms of wind cold, including headache, body and neck pains, and absence of thirst. So those are our categories. Our category and our subcategory of this herb. Let's talk about good quality of this herb. So Bensky et al. Say good quality consists of big, unfragmented, and stalkless leaves of purple color and an intensely aromatic fragrance. So here's another one of our I would say, associated textbooks. It's called The Chinese Medicinal Identification, an Illustrated Approach by Zhao and Chen. And that's great when we're trying to get at good quality herbs. And they say Zisuye is generally wrinkled and curled broken. After the leaf is spread flat, it has a semicircular shape. It has a brittle texture with a clear, fresh aroma and a slightly acrid taste. Superior quality consists of leaves that are intact and purple with a potent aroma. So both of them say that aroma, that fragrance, is quite important for good quality Zisuye. So what does it do? What are its Chinese medical actions? So according to Bensky and his team, Zisuye releases the exterior and disperses cold for externally contracted wind cold with such symptoms as fever, chills, headache, nasal congestion, cough, or a stifling sensation in the chest. It promotes the movement of qi and expands the chest for nausea, vomiting, or poor appetite. Also used as an auxiliary herb to invigorate the blood, to move the blood. It's also used during pregnancy for calming a restless fetus or for morning sickness. And finally, it resolves seafood poisoning used either alone or with other herbs. So as we get into this, we're going to talk about a lot. This is a useful herb for when you have a wind cold. It can be a useful herb for it. But I got to tell you, I don't see it used that often in wind cold conditions. It's a great herb for that, but there are better herbs for that generally. What you hear about this herb over and over again is it's great for seafood poisoning. And it's the seafood poisoning aspect that's really interesting. I teased that we're going to talk a little bit about sushi earlier on, and let's do that now because now we're talking about seafood poisoning. So if you've ever been to a high-end, or maybe I should say middle-end restaurant, a sushi restaurant, they will often have a fresh leaf of perilla as a garnish with sushi. And this is the reason why, because it resolves seafood poisoning. It's traditional to have with sushi because of that. If you ever had cheap sushi that you bought like at a grocery store, or if you're like me, sometimes at Costco, and you get that green plastic that is cut jaggedly, that green plastic is a representation of this perilla leaf. One of the things that we didn't talk about, the good quality, is the leaf has sort of a saw-like edge to it. So, and we kind of have a bigger saw-like edge to that green plastic. That green plastic that you get with that separates relatively cheap sushi is a representation of this herb. And so that's interesting. Now, I got to say, I'm not seeing that as much as I used to, that little green plastic, which is probably good. We probably don't need it. It doesn't do anything other than decorate it a little bit. But that's where that actually comes from. It's because it resolves seafood poisoning. There you go. If you know your sushi, you know that you should know this herb. By the way, very, very common sushi is actually just a ball of rice with shiso, which is perilla leaf. And I can't remember off the top, is it wrapped in the perilla leaf or is it part in the ball? I can't remember, but it's a common, sort of homemade sort of type of sushi. Okay, so that was all Bensky and a little bit of me going in there. Let's talk about Chen, what they say the Chinese medical actions are. So Chen say it releases the exterior and dispels cold. Okay, we know that. It regulates qi and expands the chest, harmonizes the middle jiao or middle burner, and alleviates nausea and vomiting. I have a question here. Is it for seafood poisoning if this bad meal comes from too old food, already smells bad? The answer to that is yes, it's supposed to help that, but I would probably suggest don't eat the smell bad food before. And so then you wouldn't have to eat the perilla. But yeah, that's the sort of thing you can help with. But sometimes, seafood's bad and you don't even really realize it's bad. And you can help with that. So, okay. So back to Chen. So harmonizes the middle jiao, middle burner. We've talked about that in the past in superb herbs. Alleviates nausea and vomiting. It also calms the fetus. So again, there's a calm the fetus herb. We have a few of those in our formulary in the Materia Medica. This is not one of those. I like this herb a lot because it not only calms the fetus, but also can help morning sickness. It's great for nausea and vomiting. So I really like this herb, but it's not commonly used for that. I think of other herbs first when I think about calming the fetus, but this is definitely an herb I keep in mind because of that anti-nausea aspect of it as well. Finally, what's one of the main things we think about for nausea and vomiting is fresh ginger. And it's the same category as this, same subcategory as this. So yeah, right in there, same thing. So there you go. So finally, they say it alleviates seafood poisoning. So again, we have that seafood poisoning aspect of this. Brad and Wiseman, our third text, say it effuses the exterior and disperses cold, moves qi and loosens the center, and has several additional uses such as treating abdominal pain, vomiting, and diarrhea from eating fish or crabs. So that's seafood poisoning. And then our sort of semi-textbook that we use here is Chinese Medicinal Identification, an illustrated approach book. And they say, it says, It resolves the exterior, disperses cold, moves qi, harmonizes the stomach, diffuses the lung, transforms phlegm, and calms the fetus. So that they don't really mention the seafood poisoning aspect of it. But other than that, you can see that all of these are pretty similar in what they say this herb does, which means there's no discrepancies, which is good, and also kind of not common. Okay, preparation. So Bensky and his team has a discussion of one special preparation. This is dry fried perilla leaves, or chao zisuye. The leaves are fried lightly and briefly over a warm flame. For prepared perilla leaves, zisuye, they are sprayed with a honey water mixture before lightly frying dry. These methods both reduce the aroma and pungency of zisuye so that the leaves are less sweat-inducing. This is an advantage in treating older, weaker, or yin-deficient patients who would be injured by excessive sweating. Nowadays, however, the leaves are almost always used in their unprepared raw state. If less sweating is needed, the dosage is reduced, or herbs to support the normal qi are added. For best results, when used for releasing the exterior, zisuye should be added at the very end of boiling the decoction. And that is something that both Chen and Chen textbook and Brandon Wiseman both say as well, which we're going to see right now. Chen and Chen say when cooking the decoction, zisuye should be added last and cooked for only a few minutes. So whenever we talk about aromatic, there's an aromatic smell. What we're talking about are essential oils. Essential oils tend to boil off very quickly in a decoction or anything that has heat. And so you don't want to lose those essential oils because a lot of the efficacy of the herb, most of the herbs that are aromatic, is in those essential oils. So that's why they tend to be added last. Sometimes not even added last. This isn't cooked for only a few minutes. Sometimes you don't even cook them. You take it off the flame and then add it into the decoction, which you could do with this leaf as well, or cook it for a few minutes as well. And Brandon Wiseman agrees, simply saying it should not be boiled for long. So there you go. So that is preparations. Let's talk about some of Western uses for this herb, or maybe better to say lack of Western uses for this herb. The PDR for herbal medicines does have an entry for this herb, but its indication for use are from Chinese medicine and reiterate a lot of what we've already discussed. So in other words, they don't really have a traditional Western use of this herb in that book, which is pretty much a Western herbal book for the most part. It has some Chinese herbs, but mostly it's a Western herbal book. Similarly, WebMD.com doesn't include any uses for this herb. It has a heading for it, but it doesn't say that there are any known uses, or it had something like evidence doesn't show any particular uses for this herb, something along those lines. It seems from a cursory literature review, this herb, while relatively well known, what's surprising me is all these sources did have an entry on this herb, so it's well known, but none of them really had any traditional Western uses for this herb. So it's kind of weird because often I'll find some of our more well-known Chinese herbs will talk about some of the Western uses there. At least they're kind of known in Western herbal traditions and have some entries, but not this herb. Okay. So let's do commentary on zisuye. So Bensky et al., as usual, has an excellent and extensive commentary on this herb. And here we go. Its acrid flavor enters the qi level, while its purple color signals that it enters the blood level. So that's an interesting one if you're not familiar. It's just colors mean things in Chinese medicine, so that plays a role here as well. So blood level. These are the opening words from the discussion of zisuye in Essentials of the Materia Medica, or the Ben Cao Bei Yao, written by Wang Ong in 1664. Further description is found in Seeking Accuracy in the Materia Medica, or the Ben Cao Jiao Zhen, written by Huang Gongxiu in 1773. Quote, its aroma can vent wind outward. Its warmth can warm the middle, facilitating the comfort of the whole body. Thus it's named Revivify, Su. That's where Su comes in. Materia Medica of Foodstuffs adds that it can bring down floating qi in the chest and diaphragm. So this Materia Medica of Foodstuffs, if you missed it, which would be easy to do, I do not have a Chinese name for it, nor do I have a timing for it. And the reason why is Bensky is a huge book, and it has a fantastic in the back, not a bibliography, a list of all the books that they refer to in the book, in the context, in the book itself. And it didn't have an entry on the Materia Medica of foodstuffs. And so I went and put that into the Google machine, and it didn't come up with anything either. So I just have no idea what this book is or where it's from or what time. So it's interesting. I mean, there are hundreds of entries in Bensky, so I don't fault them at all for missing one. Man, it's such a great book. So no issues with that at all. But I am curious as to when this was written. But there you go. So that's the Materia Medica of foodstuffs, and they say it can bring down floating chi in the chest and diaphragm. Continuing with the commentary briefly, most classical texts warn, however, that continued consumption will drain away true chi. Same caveat applies to all acrid dispersing herbs. So you don't want to be on these for too long. Once the cold is resolved, let it go. So that's the commentary on this. Let's talk comparisons. Bensky compares this herb with one other herb, and I hate it. I love this herb. It's the Ephedra herba ma huang. Fantastic herb, banned in most developed countries. I would say you can't get it. I just ordered it, though. I need it for photography purposes because I keep talking about ma huang, and I need to have more photographs of it. So just got it in the mail. I ordered it through eBay, and it was from, I don't know, Singapore or Hong Kong or something along those lines. It took several weeks to get here, but I got it. You can get it. And, you know, I know I could, if I were to walk into an herb store in, you know, a Chinese herb store in town, I could ask them if they have it. I've never had any issue getting it in the past. That doesn't mean they haven't cracked down and it would be easy to get in the future, but I haven't had any problems in the past. It's a great herb, but we're not supposed to, and I would never use it on a patient. I would use it on myself. Sometimes my herbalist recommends it to me. I do all my own herbal stuff, and so I would put it in my stuff without any issues whatsoever. But anyway, so there's ma huang, herba ephedra. So and this is what the comparison is to that. While zisuye is acrid and can disperse while inducing sweating, it is not as strong as ephedra herba ma huang in this regard. Yet its aroma promotes the movement of lung and spleen qi, harmonizes the middle, and calms the fetus, qualities which are lacking in ephedra herba ma huang. So ma huang is the strongest to induce sweating, but this is pretty useful in a lot of ways. So that's the comparison with ma huang, short but sweet. There are some combinations of herbs. So this Bensky et al. Combines this herb with 3 others. One of those is with Cyperi rhizoma or xiang fu. This 2-herb combination is excellent for treating exterior wind cold where there is a pre-existing qi constraint. This will present with exterior symptoms such as chills and fever, headache, and lack of sweating, with concurrent symptoms of qi stagnation such as stuffy chest, burping, and flatulence. This combination can be used alone as part of a larger formula such as Cyperus and Perilla Leaf powder, xiang su san, but the choice of which herb shall serve as chief depends upon which symptoms are primary. Zisuye releases the exterior, but also has the ability to move middle burner qi. The addition of the acrid mobilizing quality of Cyperi rhizoma or xiang fu assures that the congealing cold, which is blocking the protective qi, is released, and that the pathogen will thereby be dispersed via the exterior. Cyperi rhizoma, xiang fu, however, contributes more than just facilitating qi movement. It also moves the qi at the blood level. When one considers that the locus of disruption in an invasion of the exterior is the disharmony between the protective and the nutritive qi, and that the latter is intimately associated with the blood, the elegance of this apparently simple combination becomes apparent. So that's our first combination. Our second one is about an herb we've been talking about, Zingiberus rhizoma recens Xinjiang. This is fresh ginger. So both herbs release the exterior and can induce sweating. The acrid warm nature of Zisuye disperses with a light qi that unblocks and a light flavor that can drain. In this way, It dispenses exterior pathogens while clearing the head and eyes, drains the lung qi, and unblocks the interstices and pores, thereby treating invasion of either wind or cold. Zingiber rhizoma recens Zhenjiang fresh ginger is acrid and warm. While it can disperse exterior wind cold, its sweat-inducing action is rather weak by itself. Combined with Zisuye, it is much stronger. This combination is very effective in treating wind-cold exterior patterns with symptoms of chills, fever, headache, nasal congestion, and most importantly, the absence of sweating. Interestingly, both Zingiberis rhizoma recens Zhenjiang and Zisuye can be used individually as an antidote to seafood poisoning. Together, this effect is increased. The pair is therefore often used for the vomiting, abdominal pain, and diarrhea that results from this kind of food poisoning. Our third combination is with Pogostimonis herba or Guanghuoxiang. Zisuye is stronger at releasing the exterior, but Pogostimonis herba Guanghuoxiang is better at aromatically transforming dampness. Thus, a combination of the two herbs transforms dampness, regulates the flow of qi, harmonizes the stomach, stops nausea and vomiting, and is often used for turbid dampness encumbering the spleen, leading to lethargy, stifling sensation in the chest, nausea, loss of appetite, diarrhea or loose stools, and a thick tongue coating. For this indication, Perilla Leaf Zisugung can be used instead of Zisuye. This combination also releases the exterior in cases of externally contracted pathogens, such as externally contracted cold occurring during hot and damp summer weather with fever, lethargy, stifling sensation in the chest, and nausea. For this indication, Zisuye is preferred for its superior ability to release the exterior. And that's our combinations today. Let's talk about contents. So according to Bensky et al., the contents of this herb include several volatile oils such as perilla aldehyde, perilla alcohol, and dihydroperilla alcohol, and other constituents such as perillicide, perillyl, beta-D glucopyranoside, cumic acid, and tannins. We mentioned tannins earlier here, so tannins are included here. Chen and Chen highlight essential oils as well as apigenin, scutellarin, vicinin, shisonin, anthocyanins, and cyanogenic glycosides. Ahmed, who did a review paper on this herb, says there are currently 271 various phytochemical compounds that have been isolated and reported in perilla seeds, stems, and leaves. Based on the chemical properties, these active compounds in perilla could be classified either as hydrophilic, which include phenolic acids, flavonoids, anthocyanins, or hydrophobic or lipophilic ones. Hydrophobic and lipophilic are the same thing. One says hydrophobic means fearing water or is not water soluble. Lipophilic means it loves or likes fats or fat soluble, and so that's the way it goes. If it's water soluble, it's fat insoluble, and if it's water insoluble, it's fat soluble. So this is fat soluble constituents as well. And these include volatile compounds, triterpenes, phytosterols, fatty acids, tocopherols, and polycosynols. Let's talk about some of the science here. According to Chen and Chen, the pharmacological effects of Zisuye include the following actions, mainly according to animal studies. Is antipyretic, so it lowers temperature and fevers. Diaphoretic, so that it causes sweating. Bronchodilator, opens up the lungs, the bronchioles of the lung. Antibiotic, so it treats bacteria. GI stimulant, gastrointestinal stimulant, so it helps the intestines, which is great. That's probably why it helps nausea and vomiting. And hyperglycemic, so it can actually cause sugar to go into the blood. They also discussed two clinical studies, one with an N of 20, so small, not statistically valid. Remember, we need 30 to 40 to be statistically valid. Showed positive results when treating warts topically with this herb ground into a paste. The other study with an N of 108. So now we're talking statistically valid, pretty decent size, not great, but pretty decent. Used an extract. The solvent was not mentioned, so we don't know what kind of extract. Was it an alcohol extract, water extract? But again, applied topically to positively treat cervical bleeding. So not typical uses for this herb, these clinical studies. But Ahmed also discussed pharmacological properties of zisuye, saying it is antioxidant, antibacterial, antifungal, anti-allergic, antidepressant, anti-inflammatory, anti-tumor, and possibly anti-HIV. So that's useful. And then the other overview study that we looked at, Wu and their team, had it may be anti-obesity and anti-androgen, which may promote hair growth, at least in mice. So that's an interesting use of this herb, not a traditional Chinese use. Drug-herb interactions. Literature search did find several constituents of this herb affected various cytochrome P450 isozymes. However, this was all bench research. The interactions were mixed, some induced, some inhibited, and none indicates what it may do in clinical studies. So I don't feel comfortable saying it does or doesn't increase drug-herb interactions. I would say it's inconclusive. More study is necessary to see if it does actually induce drug-herb interactions clinically in people. One of our books that I love is called the American Herbal Products Association's Botanical Safety Handbook. And it just has a humongous list of herbs and whether they're safe. They give a rating for drug-herb interactions, and they also give a safety rating for the herb. Unfortunately, that book does not have an entry on this herb in particular. Though, I just saw that this book is available online, and that they do update it online. The book was written in 2013, so it's 11 years old. So I wondered when I did this, with this herb being online, and I looked, but in order to look at it online, you have to join the association, and joining the association starts at about $2,000. And so I'd love to have $2,000 earned from this podcast so that I could afford that in the future. But I don't think I'm anywhere near that at this point. So unfortunately, there was no entry that I could find. Let's talk about concerns of this herb. So Bensky and his team note several concerns with zisuye. Under the heading of cautions and contraindications, they say contraindicated in those with warm pathogen diseases or with qi and exterior deficiency. Under the heading of traditional contraindications, they say in extension of the Materia Medica Bensal Yan Yi, written in 1116, Ko Zhang Shi observed that nowadays people drink perilla soup morning and night, but it is not good for them. Just as the old medical saying has it that aromatic plants cause diseases which steal away riches, this is one such case. For example, in people with spleen and stomach cold, it often causes runny diarrhea without their realizing it. Remember, this is cold, so if you're already cold, this is not a good thing to add. I shouldn't say it's cold, it's cooling, it's cool. Cold is a grade more cold. So continuing with the traditional contraindications. In the centuries since this was written, most Materia Medica texts repeated or paraphrased this passage in the discussion of zisuye. Chen Shi Duo, in New Compilation of Materia Medica, the Bensao Xin Bian, written in 1694, was the first to question whether this herb necessarily causes diarrhea in those with spleen and stomach cold. Ko Zhang Shi has a saying that people with spleen and stomach cold who consume zisuye usually have diarrhea. But do they really? I say zisuye is a wind herb good at calming the liver. If earth is excessively controlled by wood, then people will often have diarrhea. But once wood is calm, then earth will obtain the nourishment it needs. It goes without saying that zisuye is acrid and warm. Acridity can expel dampness, while warmth can expel cold. I'm sorry, I got that totally wrong with the spleen, stomach cold thing, so I apologize with that. So is acrid and warm, acridity can expel dampness, while warmth can expel cold. So people with spleen and stomach cold should really not have any problem. How could it cause diarrhea? It is only that acrid aromatic flavors are able to disperse a person's true qi. Short term, this is no problem, but long term, it will cause injury. This should also be kept in mind. Continuing with traditional contraindications, harm and benefit in the Materia Medica Ben Sao Hai Li, written by Ling Quan in 1893, added some other concerns about this herb. Its flavor is acrid and warm, a plant that is pure yang. Thus, any patient with qi deficiency or weakness of the exterior should not take it, nor should those with heat from yin deficiency, fire causing headaches or nausea. Under the heading of toxicity, they say a large dosage of this herb can raise blood sugar levels and should not be used in those suffering from diabetes. That's interesting. It's the only herb I'm aware of that says that. Continuing with toxicity under Bensky, in one case, 15 grams of the herb, 5 times the suggested maximum dose, taken as a decoction, caused headache, nausea, diaphoresis, restless. I am sorry, let's skip over this. This is not about this herb at all. Please disregard what I just said. We're moving on. So Chen Chen had similar concerns. Since Zisuye is acrid and warm, it can easily damage yin and qi. Therefore, it should be used with caution in patients with febrile disorders, yin deficiency, qi deficiency, or exterior deficient syndromes without perspiration. Zisuye should also be used with caution for patients with nausea caused by heat. Zisuye should be used only on a short-term basis. Long-term use may lead to qi deficiency. They also say under the heading of toxicology, administration of Zisuye is occasionally associated with adverse reactions, overstimulation, and allergic reactions. Okay. The PDR for herbal medicines says under the headings of nope, sorry, this is again not supposed to be there. Okay, moving on. That's it. We're there. Oh, that was a big one. So today we started our continuing discussion of pharmacognosy. Started with continuing our discussion of pharmacognosy with a conversation about tannins. Then we looked at another single Chinese herb, Zisuye, Perillae Folium, or simply Perilla Leaf. An interesting warm acrid herb that releases the exterior that can also be used to calm a fetus and help seafood poisoning. As usual, we explored all the intricacies of this herb as well as an explanation of its category. With that, we conclude another exploration of a very useful Chinese herb. I love this herb, one of my favorite herbs. Our next episode, we'll be looking at another herb of the world. We're going to be looking at lemon balm, or Melissa officinalis. This is a relatively well-known medicinal and culinary herb with some very interesting traditional uses. As always, we will do our deep dive into this herb formula and look at its traditional uses and its preparation, interactions, and cautions. And as usual, we will be adding something a little different. Will we be continuing our look at pharmacognosy, or we'll do something different as a little different, something a little different? It's going to be another interesting vacation into the exciting continent of herbs. Please join us in 2 weeks. And I'd like to thank you very much for being there today. If you liked this podcast, please do us a huge favor. Describe in your favorite podcast app. We thank you for even considering doing that. That does wonders for us and helps us grow. And remember, you can get this course as well as many others as continuing education units and National Certification Commission of Acupuncture and Oriental Medicine professional development activities at integrativemedicinecouncil.org. That's www.integrativemedicinecouncil.org. And don't forget that 20% off with the code SH20OFF, SH20OFF, all lowercase. And you can always get in touch with me at drgreg@spurbsherbs.com or at our website, www.spurbsherbs.com. That's SPERBSHERBS.com. And as usual, we have a good bibliography. Thank you very much. Appreciate you joining us today. Have a good one. The proceeding was presented by Dr. Greg Sperber. We would like to thank Janelle for all her support and everybody else who contributed to this program.
Janelle.
Timothy Dobbins,
Roger Campbell.